Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of Is That So? The title of this episode is going to be The Ocean and the Wave. So today I kind of want to talk about how I understand God, what I understand the nature of God to be through some of the different things that I've studied and kind of the realization and connection that I found to God. So I want to start off by a teaching that I give complete and total credit to a Vietnamese Zen monk. He's one of the most famously outspoken Zen monks. He's a very prolific author. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh. And this teaching comes from a book of his I read called No Death, No Fear. This book is phenomenal. I'll try to put a link to it in the description. Buy a copy of it if you can and read it. But anyways, before we even get to God, let's get to this analogy of the ocean and the wave. So, there are two perspectives that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about when it comes to thinking or perceiving reality. There is what he calls the historical dimension or perspective. He calls them dimensions, but it's easy to think about it as perspective. So the historical dimension and the ultimate dimension. How does this transition to a wave? So if you think about the ocean, you have all these different waves. Every wave has a beginning, so it pops up, it exists for a while, it rides and rides and rides, and then the wave eventually is going to hit the shore, and it has an end. Waves have peaks, and they have valleys. Sometimes waves are really big, sometimes waves are really little, and waves are different in comparison to all of the other waves that are around them. Anybody who's ever seen video footage of a tsunami knows that there are big waves and there are little waves. So in this analogy, we are waves. And really anything that we can see that exists is a wave. So we obviously are born, we have a beginning, we go through life, we have our ups, we have our downs, and then eventually we die. But if you think about reality, what are we made up of? Well, we are made up of organs, and those organs are made out of tissues, and those tissues are made out of molecules, and those molecules are made out of atoms. And you can keep subdividing and subdividing, but eventually you get to this base layer of stuff the entire universe is made out of, everything. Thich Nhat Hanh has this saying that everything is made up of non-that stuff. So humans are made up entirely of non-human elements. Flowers are made up of entirely non-flower elements. There's carbon, there's water molecules, but those things are not the flower. A flower is just the title that we give the accumulation of all of those different parts. We are the same way. So the ultimate dimension is that baseline of reality, that baseline of stuff that comprises everything. The air we breathe, the car that's sitting in your parking lot, the planet Jupiter, the black holes that are so completely far away from us that we can't even comprehend the distance, down to our children, the music we listen to. Ultimate dimension is everything that makes that stuff that stuff. It's that base layer. And according to Buddhism, when we learn how to get in touch with the fact that we are that base layer, then everything else up here in this historical dimension, it doesn't bother us as much anymore. Yes, we're going to die. Yes, we were born. Yes, we have highs and we have lows. But when we realize that we're not the wave, but we're the water, we are the ocean, that's when we get that connection to the ultimate. So that's kind of the Buddhist perspective on things. What really made the breakthrough for me was when I started to study Hindu scriptures, because the Hindus would talk about these things almost in the exact same way. But you know what? Instead of calling it the ultimate dimension, they called it God. See, God, or the term, the name that they give him, give it, him, she, whatever, the ultimate force is Brahman. But, it's no different than saying God. You know, in the Hebrew Bible, God tells Moses that his name is just I am. I mean, there's not, God's name isn't Frank, isn't Jeff. There's not a specific name. So I don't imagine yourself talking or thinking about false gods just because we're using a different name. But anyways, that baseline of reality is called Brahman. And that clicked for me because it's like all of a sudden now I can, there's proof that God's there. You can logically understand, okay, there you go. And when we think about the soul, especially in our Abrahamic Western religions, we understand that our soul is a piece of God. Okay, well, it's almost like a fragment of him that we are. We are that wave, and God is the ocean. And I wanted to share this excerpt from a Hindu Upanishad. So the Upanishads are Hindu scriptures. They're kind of like, they're the creme de la creme of all the ancient Hindu teachings. These are older, than a lot of the Old Testament. These come from the Hindu Vedas. But anyways, here's the passage. And when they use the term self here, self is kind of them saying soul. Sometimes self can mean soul, sometimes it means God. It's kind of interchangeable, but I think you'll get the gist. So the passage is from the Aitareya Upanishad, and it says, "Who is this self whom we desire to worship? Of what nature is this self? Is he the self by which we see form, hear sound, smell odor, speak words, and taste the sweet or the bitter? Is he the heart and the mind by which we perceive, command, discriminate, know, think, remember, will, feel, desire, breathe, love, and perform all other like acts? Nay, these are but adjuncts of the self, or God, or the soul, who is pure consciousness. And this self, who is pure consciousness, is Brahman. He is God. The five elements, earth, air, fire, water, ether, all beings, great and small, born of eggs, born from the womb, born from the heat, born from soil, horses, cows, men, elephants, birds, everything that breathes, the beings that walk and the beings that walk not. The reality behind all of these is Brahman, who is pure consciousness." And I think that's such a beautiful passage. It kind of illustrates that God is that base. And when we learn to identify ourselves as that base, that ocean, that's where we find our connection with God. And I can hear kind of some objections from some of my Christian friends who really aren't used to these teachings, but it is my personal belief, and I don't want to shove beliefs on anybody, but my understanding, my personal belief, that Jesus Christ himself had this understanding. And kind of in closing, I wanted to share a verse out of the Christian scripture, out of the book of John, the Gospel of John with you, where I think Jesus is telling us this very thing. Comes from John chapter 4, and I'm going to start here with verse 8. He's speaking with one of the disciples, Philip. Verse 8, Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and we shall be satisfied." Philip wanted to have that connection. Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you so long, and yet you do not know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father in me?" And coming down here to verse 18, "I will not leave you desolate. I will come to you. Yet a little while, and the world will see me no more, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also." And here's the key verse. "In that day you will know me, that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you." See, Jesus is telling us here that we're all connected, that he is the Father, because him and the Father are one. The historical Jesus and the ultimate God are one. The historical Jesus and the historical you are one. The ultimate God and the historical you and me and Jesus are one. When we learn to identify with that ultimate dimension, that's when we connect with God. That's what Christ was saying here. He's saying, look, you know me. This is God. I am God. Everything. I am a son of God. I am away from God, but you can know God because you know me, because we are here. And one of the verses that comes up a lot when I kind of talk about the fact that I learn from these different philosophies, that I study these different religions, people wonder how I can wear a cross and have a statue of Jesus on my stand because people quote that scripture. And it's right here in the same chapter. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. But as soon as that verse is over, the next verse, if you had known me, you would have known my Father also. Henceforth, you know him and have seen him. See, when Jesus says, no man cometh unto the Father but by me, I think he's still teaching. It makes sense if it's in the same discourse, the same doctrine. He's not going to give one message here and then turn around and contradict himself in the very next part of the talk he was given to his disciples. Saying that trying to only know, let's see here. It is kind of hard to articulate, but when Jesus said that no man cometh unto the Father but by me, he's still saying that he is the Father. He's saying that he is ultimate reality. Trying to know Jesus and not know the rest of ultimate reality is like trying to look at me and only see my nose and not see my whole entire face. So God is God. God is that ultimate dimension. I don't believe that only a certain group of people in one certain amount of time were able to find that connection with him. It doesn't make sense to me that God would speak to one group of people in one portion of history and then everybody else in all other time frames in every other part of history on this globe aren't going to have access to him. That's why we see such illuminated, enlightened, and kind souls in all the religions of the world. That's why we see Gandhi in Hinduism. That's why we see Rumi in Islam. That's why we see people like Thich Nhat Hanh and the Dalai Lama in Buddhism. That's why we see Jesus Christ within this Jewish tradition. That's why our pastors that we know and love are as great as they are, because everybody can have that connection with the ultimate dimension. Everybody can have that realization that, look, we are not the wave, but we are the ocean, which is God. God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I'm not a scholar. I'm no college graduate with a bunch of degrees, but I hope you've enjoyed my perspective. Take care.